Dr. Amidu, you are one of the 10 scientists who were selected from the AXA Research Fund COVID-19 Call for Projects. Your research is about adapting pandemic management to vulnerable populations. What exactly makes vulnerable populations so important when it comes to managing pandemics?
Well, this is very exciting question and exciting topics given our current event. We know that the research or the study has suggested that pandemics normally have an effect, severe effects on vulnerable populations. So we can talk about what they call SARS 2003. We can also talk about H1N1 2009. We can talk about Ebola 2013. We can also talk about the same Ebola 2015. And then currently, we can also talk about the COVID-19. If you look at all this pandemic, the effects on vulnerable what they call population is very severe. Here, the vulnerable population is not limited to the migrants or those who work in the informal sector or those who have an informal settlement. It affects everybody, but the effect is more severe to the vulnerable population. So, conducting this basic research to unravel and then to suggest an innovative way of implementing this kind of severe, what they call a pandemic associated with the vulnerable society is in the good, it's in the right direction. So I think that basically what we want to do is to develop a mechanism in such a way that we're able to ascertain some facts that we can advise the policymakers to resolve or to reduce the effects of pandemic in future.
I see. So I think my main question really is, what are the practical applications, and if you can elaborate on the practical applications of your research, and maybe also on the importance of mobile telephony in the context of vulnerable populations and pandemic management.
Good. Yeah, if you look at our study, first of all, the essence of this particular study is to develop an appropriate measure so that we can forestall the future event of any pandemic. That's the first one. The second is to institute a safety net, what we call a safety net, so that safety net will be able to absorb any future, what they call pandemic associated with vulnerable population. Here, let me give you an example. Our study will try to institute a measure where we can advise the vulnerable within the society to actually contribute a mega in form of what we call macro insurance. Assuming that you earn $1 a day, in Ghana here, $1 a day is typically a good money. So if you consume 90% of that $1, that 10%, which is 10 cents, if you save 10 cents every day, at the end of the month, you have $3. This $3, you can buy an insurance for future, what they call pandemic. Second, the third is Ghana here, where our study is predominantly conducted. We have more than 16,000 those who subscribe to smartphone. 16 million population in Ghana here have a smartphone. So here, what we want to do is that we suggest to the government that the essence of this mobile phone is to be used, especially the vulnerable population, in transacting their business. So currently, what we do have is that during this the current pandemic, the government try as much as possible to reach this what they call vulnerable population, because we don't have their statistics. It was very difficult for government to reach out to them. So we're advising that in future, our research will suggest that let those who have the what they call mobile phone to develop or to have access to internet, which is key, so that the government may announce or the government may put pictures. Because remember that those vulnerable populations live in an informal settlement. So the fourth, what they call practicability of our research is that we have something we call the ATES network. And so if you look at our full what they call proposal, here we have international what they call organization, which we call them development partners. We have the government and its agency on the other hand, and then we have the civil society. We also have the private sector. So this actors will try to see whether we can develop a network among them, so that if a flow from the development partners will either go direct to the civil society or the private sector, or it go to the government direct or the government agency. So it can flow from the government to the, it can flow from the international partners to the government, from the government to the private sector, and then back to the artist. So here our study in practicability, we have four. One, developing appropriate what they call measures to forestall future pandemic. Two, to institute a safety net. Three, the use of a mobile phone. For this artist network.
I see. So it's really all about inclusion into pandemic response management.
Good.
So how then do you plan to make your findings as useful as possible to the government agencies that are responsible for pandemic management?
Very good. See here, just as I said, first is to have a network or a workshop. And this workshop will include everybody. We will include the civil society, will include the what they call the vulnerable population itself, and it will also include the government. That's the first one. So that if you have the workshop, we are trying to inform the participants or the key artists or the key stakeholders about the funding of our research. The second issue is that we try to develop a policy brief. At least the three areas of our research will develop a policy brief. And this policy brief will be given directly to the agency, what they call involved. If it is the agency related to children, women and children, we'll give that policy brief to that agency. If it is the Ministry of Finance, we'll have to do that. The third, what they call the third dissemination is probably maybe to publish it in the very strong or in the international peer-reviewed journal for academics and then the practitioners. And then the last but not the least is to have what they call a dialogue between the vulnerable group, which is the main focus of our research, the agencies, which is the government agency, and the researchers. So I believe with this four mechanism for providing information to the stakeholders, will resolve our issue or will meet the objective of our research.
I see. So there's a lot of stress on dialogue. That's fantastic. So Dr. Amidu, thank you very much. We're really looking forward to the results and to learning more about how your research progresses.
It's my pleasure.